Welcome back. This time I am with Luciana Minassian. She is an attorney specialized on international humanitarian law. And I would like to invite her to introduce herself about the areas of her expertise.
Thank you so much, Alfredo. I hope you have a nice afternoon. So yes, I'm a lawyer and I'm mostly focused on international humanitarian law and international criminal law because it's part of the job that I've been doing and it's been ongoing at least for the last 5 years. Before that, of course, I was focused on human rights law and international law because I was assistant to professors at University of Buenos Aires School of Law. But right after the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, the war broke out there in the region. I'm also representing prisoners of war and also working on legal actions.
People who may know about this conflict was a short conflict between Albania and Azerbaijan, right?
Armenia and Azerbaijan.
Armenia and
Yes,
Azerbaijan.
Armenia and Azerbaijan, yes,
Armenia and
for a
Armenia.
piece of territory that was divided during Stalin regime back then in 1921. And it was a region populated mostly with Armenian community. Like, let's say, even though it was during the SSR era, the region called High and Autonomous High Region, because there are mountains of Nagorno-Karabakh. It was populated 80% by Armenians and like 20% or a little bit less by Azerbaijani population. And we had two wars. A war after when SSRs were dismantling, they had the right for a referendum. So they decided to be autonomous and had their own institutional powers, like since they were indigenous native peoples. Then war broke out the years 1992 up to 1994, and Armenian population won there, and they lived approximately 30 years in the same situation, having their own authorities. I mean, president, parliament, their judges. And then during COVID era, 2020, the war broke out again because there was escalation and Azerbaijan started the aggression, and the territories were lost. A little bit of the territories were lost during 2020, and then there was forced displacement of Armenian population during September 2023. So by now,
I
yeah,
remember
more
to have
than
read about something about that, that even the Armenians felt betrayed by the Russians. But
yeah.
this time, I would like to request your expertise to address the issue of Iran. And when it comes to Iran, I have 2 points that are normally neglected by the media. That is how intertwined this issue is with the Palestinian issue. Number two, how this attack seems to have come just in time not to save Israel from a bomb that didn't exist, but to help Netanyahu to narrow the gap with Naftali Bennett in the Israeli polls. Would this be an accurate appreciation?
Yeah, actually, okay, there's a colleague who is not speaking about the 11-12 day war. That was what we witnessed the last weeks. But he also goes back to October 2023, the October 7 attacks during 2023. I would even go back to
It has a
other
long
times.
story. That has a long story. Soleimani,
Exactly.
the
So
times the United
yeah,
States, even the United States has assassinated some Iranian scientists.
yeah. Uh, So maybe just to start from some point, it's like okay, prior to this two last weeks, they had been dismantling Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah. Uh, I was citing Nasrallah's assassination because it was something that brought the attention of the world. There are so
One top
many
leader of
groups.
Hamas who was in Iran at the time. So the
Exactly,
story is long,
exactly.
but
Yeah. What I would like to say is like all these cells were prior. We even suffered in Argentina during the 1990s when we had this terrorist attack on a building of a Jewish community building
the AMIA.
called AMIA. The AMIA, exactly. So I'm trying to like give a little bit of background
Ah,
of what they were kind of financing, like what is after Iran, what is supposed to be after Iran, and what was dismantled before they got to these last 12 days. How do we got here? Just for the people to understand a little bit more of the conflict, and at least it's my humble opinion about all this. So
it has
yeah,
a long story that is very intertwined with the Palestinian conflict because
yeah,
the Ayatollah used the flag of the Palestinian cause to attack Israel.
yeah.
Besides that, in recent history, they don't have a flag of their own. In other words, if the Palestinian conflict would solve tomorrow, they would have no excuse.
Exactly, exactly. That goes back to your question, like how much I wouldn't say leverage, but what is the profit of Netanyahu by being involved always in conflict? What does it bring to him? And maybe some points that we were like brainstorming yesterday. It was like, okay, he keeps by this he can still be in power.
Mhm.
I constantly in touch with colleagues from Israel, and it's not the same situation. What happened during October 2023, there was some sort of mood around that, and everyone wanted to collaborate. Even the displaced people, the people who had to leave Sderot, the people who survived the attacks and had to go live Eilat somewhere else because they were constantly being moved from one place to another. I was texting some people,
You mean
uh,
Israeli survivors of October
Israeli
7th?
survivors of the region of the South region, the Sderot region, the region of the
Mhm.
kibbutzim that were attacked during October 7, 2023.
Mhm.
But people like even reservists were all in. Doesn't mean that they are not in by now, but the mood has changed. Let's bear in mind that Netanyahu still last week, for instance, due to his legal claims that are against him based on corruption, the legal cases against him and his wife based on corruption charges and different things. There were hearings, couple of I think 1 week ago or like 2 weeks ago, there were hearings, but he was engaged into this new conflict with Iran. So it's like putting a little bit, like bringing other things to the table,
And they
so
are
population can
related
forget.
to bribes, right? There is
Yeah,
not that they are
and
related to some polemic political decision. No, they are related to
exactly.
bribes.
So, according to the Institute for National Security Studies, which is also part of the Tel Aviv University, they are conducting surveys, yes, on the last week's attacks, and it's like remarkable to see not only Jewish population of Israel but also Arab population of Israel that the mood changed slightly. There is a little bit of optimism. Even the image is raised. Even Bibi the Netanyahu, Benjamin Netanyahu image raised during those days. But they believe that they could. Okay, now there's kind of there is a ceasefire. Let's say there is a ceasefire, but in the case that they resume. Uh, attacks or whatever, they could be willing to resist up to 1 month. And right after that, again, the image would go down. I mean, it was a survey conducted on about
The matter
850
is that
people.
October 7 couldn't have come in a much better time for Netanyahu, precisely. Among other things, his decline of the polls and his for judicial issues. Because Netanyahu is obviously going to manage this conflict. So, according to the polls, when they prove to be counterproductive, he's going to just try to um, play down the conflict. And besides that, his coalition is not that much interested in Iran. They are more interested in settlements. So he has a way to
Probably.
reward. So
Yeah, yeah.
he's going to manage, because for what I have been reading in newspapers, Jewish newspapers, yeah, he's already capitalizing on that. He's already closing the gap with Neftali Bennett.
Yeah, and I think that in a sense they are both Iran and Israel, they are buying time. They were buying time with these latest actions, because the Ayatollahs really were. We can say that they were defeated, like members of the Revolutionary Guard were killed. So it's not a good situation for Iran,
And
even
I
though
want
we
to
know
I want
that.
to go there, but
Yeah.
before I would like to finish something about the Israeli politics. Is that it's very disappointing that the Israeli opposition has been able to offer nothing better than Bennett, considering that Bennett not long ago was a prime minister, and was a very mediocre prime minister, because it was pretty much Likud without Netanyahu, and he only lasted one term. So,
Yeah, you know that I'm always engaged mostly in academic discussions,
mhm,
and they don't go to the politics side of the discussions, which is what you're
mhm,
bringing up to the table.
mhm.
So I don't know if, in somehow, if they are kind of freezed with all these political discussions, and like the conflicts puts them in a leaves them to a place of non-discussion. But okay, it's not new that people were complaining about the situation of having for such a long period of time a person like Netanyahu in charge of the country, because of course there is criticism, and we hear criticism, but I don't see that much confrontation. I don't hear a lot of confrontation. There should be more in the way that you are pointing it out. And I don't see a lot of that.
Consider
Maybe I
consider
think that
this. Consider
I
this.
think the amount of PTSD of the people and how tired they are after 2 years of conflict is like leading. He's gaining from this in a sense. It might be that the situation. I was
Yeah,
at the
but
Knesset.
that's precisely because
Yeah.
the opposition in Israel, from Gantz to Lapid, has not been able to help people connect the dots. Just consider this:
Mhm.
many people in Israel have died for a bomb that didn't exist, and yet the opposition has not been able to capitalize that. On the contrary, you see the bizarre turn of events that Netanyahu is even increasing, rising in the polls.
He's still rising in the polls, but it might be a rise like moment. He might be having a momentum. That's why I
Mhm,
was focusing on the Institute of National Security Studies
mhm.
survey, because it might last for a month. Like that was the amount that the people were they could resist up to that moment. Reservists would go, but also the families don't want them to be engaged for more than that. After that, the numbers start falling in the service. And I think it's like the logical thing to happen, because if you if you are in their shoes, of if I was in their shoes, like, okay, it is totally understandable. That's
It's
why I tell you,
understandable. It's understandable,
look
but
at the panorama.
Mhm.
After 2 years, there is a lot of people who couldn't get back to the places where they lived. I was there. I lived in kibbutz on
Mhm.
July, August 2023. I was shown I had 7 seconds to get to the shelters in Niram kibbutz. So I was at Nalos kibbutz, which was terribly attacked, but it was the peripheria and they
Mhm.
couldn't get to the houses that were more in the center. Like if you went to their swimming pool, there were 7 shelters. Okay, they were decorated for the kids not to panic when they are
Mhm.
there, but people were prepared. So really, when the thing happened 2 months after I left that place, I was like, am I naive? Things seem to be organized there. There were even shelters that, if the sirens ran out, would only open in that case. I don't know if we had images of that kind of shelters. They were
Let,
very
let,
modern
let, let me
shelters. We
let me
thought,
put it this way.
yeah.
Not only in Israel, Netanyahu has caused the death of many Israelis for a bomb that didn't exist. Is that his war in Gaza makes no sense in terms of counterinsurgency. Insurgencies are political wars, and whether you get the population behind the insurgency or you could separate it makes all the difference. Yet that brings the question: if what is even ridiculous and bizarre to see how you see the IDF going chasing the Hamas all over the Gaza Strip, first in the north, then in the south, then in the center, then again in the south, playing guacamole. That's ridiculous. That makes no sense in terms of counterinsurgency. And if even if you don't care about the Palestinians, you care only about Israel, okay, but then the war must be able to make Israel safer. But it's not making Israel safer. It makes no sense in terms of counterinsurgency. If it doesn't make sense in terms of counterinsurgency, then who is this war designed to benefit?
Yeah, okay. Um, I mean, they are still dismantling on the regarding the Gaza Strip. They are still dismantling Hamas units. It's not that they finished. I mean, of course, there is benefit that a person like Bibi Netanyahu could get from this conflict. But okay, I know they are still ongoing. There are still ongoing missions there, and things are not dismantled. I was discussing. That's why I think I don't know if I brought this issue before, but I was discussing with both Mina 2050 and Israel and one other humanitarian NGO that was bringing the aid to Gaza, because it was very difficult for them, not only for the Israel aid, the ones brought from Israel, the humanitarian aid and the
Mhm.
sanitary assistance that was brought from Israel, but also from the Palestinians. I mean, MENA 2050 is organized by Sarah Waida. She's a Palestinian girl trying to do her best to help the brothers that are in Gaza. And it's also very complicated because we're talking about that less than 3 million population being forced to go and go back from here and there. It was very difficult. Israel was texting them. It was complicated in the case of Iran because Israel could not send messages. Apparently, there was a blockout because the drones were operated by AI. I mean, these last 10, 12 days. So there were blockouts, and that left the families without communication. I mean, probably the government of Iran was also after that because they wanted to be left. I don't know to what extent they were trying to save the Iranian population. I mean, maybe they were like, okay, let's have more numbers of casualties. Maybe it benefits that to have more number of casualties. So my point is, um it's complicated for both populations, of course, not only on the Israel side. I also believe that on the Iranian side, they were benefiting from conflict. I think Iranian side is more damaged by now. I was reading the possible. I had a very hard discussion yesterday because the people from
let me go to Iran, but first let me ask you this, because what I find very irritating is that professional journalists who should have an idea of counterinsurgency, because that's what Hamas is. Hamas is not a country with an army, a navy. It's not a conventional war. That doesn't seem to have the slightest idea of what happens in other counterinsurgency experience. For instance, Algeria, Vietnam, or Ireland. In the case of Ireland, the Good Friday Agreement was proposed as an alternative. That was basically incorporated in what is the Olmert plan, and you cannot see any mention even of the Olmert plan in the media. Recent mentions are in Le Monde, in the Times of Israel, but this is what is irritating is the mediocrity of the media in the West, because that's what it pains me, is that Palestinians, Israelis, and Iranians are dying and are suffering because of a laughable war strategy that seems to benefit only Netanyahu and Putin.
Kind of, yeah, I would kind of agree with that. Yeah, totally. And also bear in mind that I think that Russia was offering also peacekeeping force, which brought me to the trilateral agreement, what I was talking about, Nagorno-Karabakh trilateral agreement. We had Russia brokering the agreement, and they decided to put 5,000 people, Russian army, to be monitoring and to be peacekeepers of the conflict. And it was like the worst scenario to have them there. And they are suggesting to bring peacekeepers on this scenario as well in Iran. So who benefits
we are
from
talking
here?
of the same Russians who, with the Iranians, use a shadow fleet to evade sanctions.
Exactly.
What brings me to Iran? Let me make you this. What brings me to Iran? Let's say, for instance, that I were Trump. That I were president. What would I have done? I would have offered convoke Pezeshkian, who is the most visible face among the moderates in Iran, to offer him something, the Obama's nuclear deal, or some improved version of the Obama's nuclear deal, not Khamenei. So this deal is with Pezeshkian. Why? Because I need to undermine the Ayatollahs. This is a hideous autocracy. But elevating Pezeshkian could revive the Green Movement, and they are not going to that. So and if Pezeshkian wants to crack down in the Green Movement, then that would give the United States an excuse to crack down in the nuclear deal and go back to sanctions and bombing and all that. But the difference is that in such a scenario, the population probably is going to side with the Green Movement. On the contrary, because of this ridiculous and absurd bombing, because as we were mentioning, there were even tracks and uranium traces that suggest that the core of the enrichment program have already moved from Fordow and Natanz. Because of this clumsy attack on Iran, the only thing you have done is to undermine Pezeshkian and elevate the Iranian Revolutionary Guards and Khamenei. That would be correct?
I don't know. There's so much noise there today. I was trying to find more information about this today, but the only thing that I was finding, I mean, Masoud Pezeshkian okay, he's currently relevant. I mean, he's really currently like following the disqualification or death or other high profile figures. I think he represents like a more moderate or reformist position within the political spectrum of Iran. But I was also having the voice of what if the Ayatollahs disappear? There's no son, there's no grandson on the scenario. The thing is,
The
uh,
Revolutionary Guard,
if we
good point, Claudius, like after Caligula died, so a puppet of the more radical wing. And yes, Pezeskian is undermined, but because precisely it's the same thing, unfortunately, that happened to Rouhani, who
yeah,
signed the nuclear deal with
yeah,
Obama, and then who then was undermined by Trump with sanctions.
exactly. But what I was trying to see is exactly what was on the Western outlets today. What they are pushing more is the figure of Pahlavi, Reza Pahlavi. What, because there's not a lot of information on going back to the Green Movement, Pezeshkian. Like I really couldn't find. Like I've been like for the last almost 24 hours thinking, what information are they actually bringing with them? Okay, they are only they are trying to, in a sense, the best scenario that they are without putting names. What they are trying to put as the best scenario is like move from this theocracy, go back to some sort of secular
Monarchy.
democracy. Uh, they want to do some sort of rule of law, but it's not a theocratic rule of law, which will have like respect for human rights. It would be separate from
You
religion.
know why
They are moving
my
into
problem?
that,
You know
which I don't
what
know if they will achieve.
you know what my problem is with Pahlavi
Yeah.
is that he is pretty much the same thing as Ahmad Chalabi in 2003.
Mm.
Nobody follows him, not even his dog. So what? And yet he was used by American neocons who wanted to go to invade Iraq no matter what, as a
Yeah.
sort of propaganda. The problem is that once the Americans occupied, nobody followed Chalabi, and nobody is going to follow the former the son of the Shah.
Yeah.
On the contrary, Pezeskian could have had a chance, but as you say, it has been undermined by this attack.
Yeah, and I think also whatever scenario we consider, it's going to be a lot of chaos. Like the weakening of the Ayatollahs, even if the power doesn't end up in the son or the grandson, bearing in mind all this dismantling also of the Revolutionary Guard, I think that scenario is not a good one, and it's going to bring a lot of chaos, which is not what we want for the population, because it's really tough for them. If we think about all these years, it's like really, really tough. Every time I have some notice that at least some student gets a visa to go study abroad, something like, I'm sorry to say, but I feel so much relief when I find these types of students or something. It's like they had this chance to move. I also had yesterday I was discussing with another Iranian citizen, but he's now living in the States. But he didn't. I was discussing some brochure that the 1988 atrocities, massacres of Iran. There's this movement, and they were like trying to push a lady, which now I don't remember her name. Okay, sorry. And the guy was at night, why do you speak about this woman? I said, because this Institute of Atrocities, which is very reliable for me, is pushing for this woman. No, but this woman is same, it's worse than the Ayatollahs. It would be worse. It's a position, but it's going to be worse. So I don't know. Like really, it's really whatever scenario will leave the people in chaos.
What
That's for
how,
sure.
do you see any chance of reviving the statue of Pezeskian or some other moderate?
Uh, it could happen. Like it could happen. Also, okay, it's also like the same in the same sense that for today we spoke a very little bit about the enriched uranium and for Natanz and Isfahan, but 2 days ago when I was invited to public TV here in Buenos Aires, I was like posting all these scenarios because for a colleague of mine who actually I consider him like a mentor, he was like, it's completely destroyed. And where's the evidence?
Yeah.
Did the inspectors get to go there? Could they, if there is rubble, could they enter through the rubble? What about the satellite information that we could read through the satellite information? We could read that maybe pickups were there and they were able to collect some sort of material. What if this entombing situation prevented the attacks from destroying whatever there was underground? What if there was a little explosion inside, but it makes the dirty bomb? We don't know. What do we know about this? Tell me. You tell me.
The Iranian parliament has agreed to withdraw from the non-proliferation treaty. On the other
Exactly.
hand, what I don't know if to call it hope, but what it could deflate the tensions is that China and Russia apparently have tried to downplay the the issue.
Could be, and also let me
Mhm.
point out this about China, Russia, not only China and Russia, but also North Korea, is the
Mhm.
fact that you may not be able to build the bomb, but you might be doing some, you might be receiving parts and sending parts, which is part of the business that they are doing. They are not going to send the entire product. They are going to send parts, and this is happening. And also, I was pointing out the issue of the railways because if we speak about the nuclear arm is something, but what about the war, Iran's war with conventional arms? Okay, some colleague also said the armaments that Iran had were very old armaments, and so conventional war was not something to be worried about. But also this sort of new railway that leads from that you can get from Iran to China is sending goods and is sending armament, is sending guns. They
A-
are
a-
sending clandestine.
and
They are
yet
sending clandestine guns.
China seems to be some way sidelined in their own yuan song, because right now Kim Jong Un dares to bypass Xi Jinping and goes directly to the Khamenei, to go directly to Putin, and Putin seems to be more in command of this economic yuan song.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, could be. Okay, but in the same way that I tell you this, there were some sort of evidence, and there were doing some documentation from the Ukraine war that some old tanks with the Armenian flag that they were trying to raise the Armenian flag were also used in Ukraine. So the Russians were taking maybe the whatever was used in Nagorno-Karabakh. I don't know from where, but it was from Soviet era. So I try to explain this because it's, in my opinion, is what is going on with all these four countries. There is a lot of this contraband thing coming and going. Um, I'm so sorry that the nuclear hypothesis doesn't seem to be okay. Maybe it was only some sort of a strategy to have some leverage. I was discussing with my colleague Irina Zuckerman. She's also a human rights lawyer, but
Mhm.
she's a security analyst, and she's like a great analyst. And I was also discussing the role of Democrats here. What did they do when Putin decided to, sorry, not Putin, Trump decided to go and bomb the three central, the nuclear plants? And this disorder on the Democrats. Some not wanting to back after him, some asking them to pass through the hill, others trying to impeach him. And in that sense, what was going to be the future for that, even if Trump is not there, let's say, after he finishes his period? What is going on with these people, and how do they
Democrats are still playing dead. They are assuming that as the Trump's approval decline, they are automatically going to capitalize on that, and that's not necessarily true. That's very risky.
it is
Um, yes, Democrats are still playing dead, and that's a huge problem because they should be how if you are Khamenei, Pezeskian, or whoever in the international scenario are going to make plans counting on the Democrats in 2029 in case they come back to power. If the Democrats either are tacitly siding with Trump or also or tacitly siding with the Biden's legacy, how can you be sure you are going to get a more reasonable, active Democrat and not another Biden in 2029? Because
Yeah.
if you can't, you are on your own.
Yeah. Well, okay, we might also try to go up to the Cold War, and also bear in mind that after major crises like US, no matter how polarized, they tend to unite. So we might have that bearing in mind. So, because as we were mentioning, like after we saw this kind of so many different opinions from the Democrat when Trump decided to launch these attacks, the three attacks, and going from impeachment to passing through the hill, as we were explaining, like, okay, in the end, they have to calm down a little bit. And if not, okay, we might say they are not backing him, but I think that historically, these major crises, they seem very united, which I also highlight because it's something that, for instance, I don't see in the. I live in Argentina. I was born in Argentina, and I don't see that kind of unity as a Latin American country. So it's something that I bear in mind. Like sometimes seeing the government, but also the opposition, kind of united. We know that they are going to kill each other, but this strong message, they are still trying to seem like they are united. Of course, there was a lot of noise, but in the end, they are stay and
But
see.
I believe
No,
this is not a matter of call calculation, but a matter of mediocrity, because even they Democrats has been rebuked in the latest polls. People don't trust them on the issues. People, Trump voters don't regret their vote, and I cannot blame them. In the just in the case we are discussing, how is it possible that if you are a Democrat are not demanding more attention for the Olmert plan when that would be the perfect counter to the Republican narrative? How would you not be the case of Iran in favor of strengthening Pezeskian? Because even they are not even defending the Obama's nuclear deal. So
yeah, which they could go back. It would be good to go back there to that situation, and okay, that could be also a good some sort of a scenario. But um, even I was going to say small things, but this is not a small thing. I'm going to mention TikTok, but even the TikTok ban, I mean, it's still Trump is yet to sign the into law, but even that received bipartisan support. Also, this way of the Trump's way of leverage is also very, it might be very discomforting for not only for Democrats, even for his own uh, uh, political party, because I was in a workshop in Philadelphia when he received Zelensky. So I was able that night. I was able to be on the news. So I was moving from Fox to CNN, and nobody seemed to know what to say. Like nobody had some sort of argument. Even the ones who had to go and endorse him were like lost. I kind of see a pattern in the way he is moving. Um, Even though in this case he has not yet also used the diplomatic source, or the diplomatic negotiations, like in a long extent. So because we have seen negotiations this right conflict, we have seen negotiations for less than 24 hours of negotiation. And what you were mentioning, during 2015, whatever was brought in that agreement, it was discussed for at least 2.5 previous years. And that makes a lot of difference.
Unfortunately, Trump's style is I will check you and I will let you know what your place is, you brown servant. So you better be afraid
Yeah,
of me.
yeah, but
The problem
he's
is that doesn't generate stable negotiations, because as soon as the other side, the weaker side, finds that he could get away from the terms of that negotiation, that's going to happen. There is no stability in that kind of in that kind of deals.
Yeah, but I was putting only the example of Zelensky during February, March, the meeting there. But also with the tariffs. Look at the tariffs. It was also the same pattern of leverage. It's like he's going for everything, and then he
Mhm.
comes back and see what he can get from that. Maybe it's in his nature. I mean, before being a president, he was a
I,
businessman, and that is
no,
in his blood.
I understand
Yeah.
the way he behaves is part of his nature. And my greatest concern, as you mentioned before, is what the Democratic Party says, because there is if you don't help voters connect the dots, voters are going to vote on the basis of what they see, and they will
Yeah,
see Trump grown but strong,
yeah.
and the Democrats playing that, and nothing in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. But
What
it's
what?
like you say, it's nothing in the middle, and I think they are in a very, it's a not comfortable situation for them. I feel they are feeling a lot of discomfort. But also, when you're bringing such big issues, it's like, okay, what do we stand for? What are we going to do? Even the
Mhm.
ones who were backing Iran, like, are we really going to back Iran? Uh, it's not about, okay, some are backing Iran, some might be backing Israel. We have such a range between,
Mhm.
if we tend to analyze what is inside the Democrat Party, we will have all this wide range of people standing pro Iran and people standing pro Israel, and people in the middle, people trying to impeach the guy, people trying to back the guy, people trying to have to pass a bill before and do the formal
The
steps.
problem is that when they don't know what they are talking about in the substance of
Yeah,
the issue,
yeah, there might be a
they end up being manipulated by the likes of Bibi Netanyahu.
Mm, there might be a manipulation if people are, yeah, maybe they are not completely informed, even if in their positions they might not be completely informed about what. Yeah, and they might be okay, but it's also who pulls the strings for who, because also when Bibi Netanyahu was visiting the States, and he was sitting there, and you saw Trump, and he was in some way also patronizing and telling him what the plans were, and you saw Netanyahu that, okay, because he felt like surprised for whatever he was suggested to do, offered to do, and ta 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 ta. which is kind of normal. We saw that with Zelensky.
Uh,
It was
uh,
not in the, it was not that aggression on Bibi,
but
but it
still,
was
the problem is that they
throwing the
don't
plan.
they don't have the Democrats don't have a narrative, a compelling narrative based on facts. That's why in 2014, John Kerry did his temper tantrum, and then he ended up saying a hellhole of a point operation after Netanyahu played him. In supposedly Biden was going to tell this is laughable, but I have to say it, was going to remind Bibi, his pal Bibi, of the lessons of 9/11, and he also played him, and he to the point that the Biden even forgot about the Obama's nuclear deal. This is laughable. So
Yeah,
how
that is
voters can
laughable.
draft it? Let me ask you one before we pass to the other final issue that I am interested in. If it were up to you, what would you do to improve the Obama's a new version of the Obama's nuclear deal?
You mean like writing it
Let's
down
let's let's
again?
let's say
You mean
Democrat.
the spirit of the deal, or
No,
just trying to engage again
the
into
terms of the deal.
yeah, okay, it's a complicated question. First of all, it's like you have to reinstate the diplomatic discussion. You have to reinstate the communication in whatever means you
Yeah,
can,
no,
because it's a complicated situation.
let's say it's up to you. The
Mm.
design, what should we change from the Obama's nuclear deal, or everything is okay with the Obama nuclear deal?
Well, I also go back to what I was discussing with my Iranian mate yesterday, because he was also like, Luciana, bear in mind that having enriched uranium is also used for pharmaceutical, medical products, which was discarded by like a motivation for US, and he was trying to confirm me. So I don't know if we need to move away from the terms. I don't think we need to move away from the terms. I think we have to see how to this growing split. I think we have to make positions make positions
Probably
closer. I don't know if we need to change the spirit of the terms.
no, not the
That's what I
spirit,
think,
not the
because
spirit, but a specific parts. For instance, giving more power to the International Atomic Agency, because, for instance, there have been reports of two violations, not of the deal itself, not of about
yeah,
enrichment, but about places that were not places where there were past attempts at enriching uranium that had not been reported. That
you
kind
mean
of
inside
things.
Iran? You mean
Yes.
inside Iran?
Hmm.
Yeah, we also discussed that. Okay, they are, yeah, they were probably not reported, but it also goes hand in hand with whoever will be the continuation of the Ayatollah, or if the Ayatollah son or
No,
grandson will be
yeah,
the
that's
continuation.
why I
Because
am
if
in
they
an
are not,
hypothetical.
because we can write whatever we want in the terms we like them, but the thing is that if you're not allowed, if you are threatening Grossi, the head of the agency, if he's receiving threats and the inspectors are not allowed to enter, how can someone comply with the terms of a deal,
No,
of an agreement?
I am in an hypothetical scenario. Let's say I am a top Democrat, and I ask you, Luciana,
Okay. Yeah,
how
okay.
could we improve the Obama's nuclear deal to make it more appealable?
Okay,
Uh,
let's say we include them. Yeah, let's say we include them. Like, please come to terms with whatever you are complying by signing
mhm.
this agreement, and please display and put on everything that you have, because so far we have those three bases, and apparently you have some other places. Yes, sure. Maybe we should be asking, okay, in the meantime, rumors are everywhere. The rumors happened everywhere. You might also find people telling you, okay, Israel has the nuclear weapon. And that's why they are going. I don't have grounds for what I'm saying. I'm just repeating what I'm hearing these days.
No,
So
in this case, I am mentioning two violations
sources.
reported by the International Atomic
Yeah.
Agency.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
because
Mhm.
and then there is the issue that I believe was missing, but I understand why it was missing. That is the issue of the Iran's proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas. But it was, but I understand, at least in my opinion, that for that to be workable, you would have to have a two-state solution. And at the time, you had Bibi on the other side, what
Yes and
made that
no, because
impossible.
yes and no, because if the signatory is Iran as a state, signatory state, where some sort of rule of law is being
Mhm.
displayed and they are complying with some rule of law and whatever that represents for a state, that is something. But they are, if they are putting the nuclear weapons on the hands of Hamas or Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, or whoever comes the Houthis, this is very risky. Okay, we could apply more sanctions. I don't know in that case, because that's a bit.
What I mean is that, as you know,
But
Republicans have continually berated the Obama's nuclear deal because it didn't include the issue of Iran sponsoring terrorism. So that's why to control, to finance, to give support to these groups, and that's
but
exactly that was missing from the deal. But it was missing because Bibi Netanyahu didn't want to help with the other side of the necessary of the deal, that was the two-state solution, in order to give stability to that.
and also do the math and
Mhm,
bear in mind that if we are discussing that these conversations for this deal that was signed 2000 during 2015, we go back like almost to 2012, and bearing in mind that Hamas on 2006 had this okay, because it was not the Hamas that we had on October 7. It was a Hamas endorsed by
mhm,
the population. This is
mhm.
not an endorsed Hamas now. So we have to also bear in mind all these different stages of what Israel did want or did not want by that time, and what is the situation today, and how do we include all these proxies, which might not have been in the mind of the legislator or the guy writing the agreement. Um,
I believe
and
they were in the mind, but the Israeli part, that was Netanyahu at the moment too, didn't want to yield on concessions about the
maybe there was
Palestinian state.
something. I was thinking about the Arab Spring, because I'm moving back to
Mhm,
2012. And so now I'm moving 1 year ago, and I was thinking about the Arab Spring. So maybe there were more things back in the mind of them by that time. I'm trying to guess what was going on in their minds, even though, I mean, you understand, you clearly tried to tell me, okay, there was a reason that Bibi Netanyahu was pushing for, but also I'm trying to figure out how was the
mhm.
scenario like really 13 years ago, because it's a little bit okay.
Bibi Netanyahu hasn't changed much since he was a cheerleader of the people who assassinated Rabin many years ago.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
And there is you can disagree with some Likud people like Joel Galant,
yeah,
who
yeah,
but
yeah,
Joel Galan, at least he may be grown, but he's honest. Remember that he opposed the, for instance, expanding the Gaza war because he had already achieved the military objectives he had set
yeah.
for the war, and he
Yeah,
opposed that Netanyahu could use this war for political gain. And in my
yeah,
and I believe he was wrong, because yes, he met his military targets, but not but
yeah,
got the exactly opposite result in terms of political targets. That's why you have Hamas revived pretty much right now. But at
yeah, a little
least
bit.
there is an honest part in the case, and we mentioned, yes, before we move to the Ukraine. we mentioned just the other day, for instance, among the many instances, the Biden administration missed to get early elections in Israel, the Haredim issue. Would you like to say something about the Haredim?
Yeah, just the fact that, in a sense, the issue that Haredim at the beginning they were not engaging at all, it was a problem, and that lately, and doing follow-ups with professors and colleagues from Tel Aviv University, the thing that they are building different. Military places for them, and they are trying to engage them to at least be, they will not leave completely the yeshiva, but they might even put the yeshiva together with the military camp and try to engage them, because it's also very unfair for the entire population to risk the lives or their lives or the lives of their sons and girls, because everyone goes to conscription, to military service for the 3 mandatory years. So,
They just
and
want to study
it's
the
not
Torah.
fair. Yeah, they
They just
just
want to
want to
study
study
the
the
Torah.
Torah. Yeah, 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 yeah. And I was
But
at the
but
Knesset during
but
2020.
the point to where I was going is that
So,
days ago they were about to trigger early elections because they were part of the, and this problem came from long ago from the Biden administration and the Biden, because one of the many things, very many bizarre things in Biden's foreign policy is that he was trying to get peace in Palestine between the two parties that gained the most by killing peace,
yeah,
because it was
yeah,
Netanyahu and
exactly.
Hamas. What?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why we also have to try to incorporate Palestine voices, and keep in mind that even during this year 2025, there are conferences, and meetings trying to move the project of the two-state solution. Whether we like it, we don't like it, but that's at least I feel it's good that from some Israeli and Palestine faction, people, it's like old people doing the same, because on the Palestine side, I was speaking about lawyer Hiba Husseini. She's been there during the Oslo Accords in the 90s. So, okay, she's there again. She doesn't lose her faith. She still keeps on going. She has her Israeli counterpart doing the same. She has some
Yeah.
foreign high commissioners of UN backing and endorsing the project. We don't know if it's ever going to be. I mean, for to put some order, it would be so good to have like two states, because it's like rule of law. I'm a lawyer, so I try to put
Mm-hmm.
things in order. So in that sense, I don't know if my Israeli or Jewish colleagues will agree, of course, but in my understanding, it
They are
would
not
be
going to
good.
agree because they
They,
thrive in chaos.
I
But
know, and they are.
that's why, if you let me, the Olmert plan provided a solution because it was a multinational force, mostly Arab force occupying Palestine. So neither Hamas nor Fatah had any role in that. You build
Yeah,
institutions, let's say 2 years, and then you convoke to elections with
yeah,
with different politicians who even they may have come from the past, as in the case of the Irish Republican Army, that those who recycle into the Sinn Féin instead of staying in the fight. But you need that time to build institutions to eradicate, number one, the corruption. Otherwise,
yeah, the
all you are going to
corruption.
get is again they fighting each other with
Yeah,
bullets,
you get the same results.
like in 2006 and 7.
Exactly. The nice thing about their project is that they even decide on settlements. And for instance, if you have Israeli settlers in what we would consider Palestinian territories, they would they would have to have the citizenship of the Palestinians. I love the way they project. I don't know if we ever going to see something like this. A lot of order, but I don't know. Call it a Disneyland. I don't care. But I love the fact
No,
that they
and
are very positive.
they're receiving
Mhm.
an interesting article in Foreign Affairs that contemplates just a one-state solution, but a federation. The
Yeah,
matter is that
federations. Yeah,
none of those proposals are going to have any hope in the current status where the negotiations are between Netanyahu and Hamas. That's
yeah,
absurd.
yeah. That's absurd.
That's
Yeah,
why you need the Olmert plan. And that's why I criticize the Democrats so much, because they have never opened their mouth unless they don't know that Le Monde and the Times of Israel exist. Um,
yeah.
but
But yeah,
Mhm,
no, I think we should be, and I mean we, because it's like the international community should also not do
mhm.
stupid demonstrations and having people detained and arrested. That I don't care about that, but I
Yeah, no,
mean we
I
should all be
don't.
sitting
Mhm,
and engaging in trying to bring them a solution. I was in
mhm.
the middle of the Dead Sea during that year, and a Palestinian girl approached to me. I mean, she was not cleaning floors or washing dishes at the restaurant. She was the head of the COVID laboratory during COVID at Ben Gurion Airport. She was
Mhm.
not like fighting to make ends meet. She was an important person, and she was very young. And I was so proud of her also, because like she made that. Of course, she had family at the Gaza Strip, which she did not see for the last 30 years, and she was totally heartbroken. And we are not speaking about after October 7. I'm speaking before. I'm speaking about August at the Dead Sea. So, okay, what would be lovely is for Palestinian people to have this amount of opportunities, because that's
Um,
also push
Here in the
lift them
United
up.
States, what you will see is that unfortunately the debate, the issue has decayed into something like a sports contest. What
Mm,
team are you rooting for, Israel or
yeah,
Palestine? And each
yeah,
has its little flags, and
yeah.
they create lots of noise. And you don't see any ideas. But what you don't see any ideas in among all that noise, because the Democratic Party doesn't open their mouth to give visibility to those ideas.
Yeah, but I think that instead of bringing noise, we should bring to the population all these ideas, and like have people thinking and have
Exactly,
people seated at the table
exactly.
and start discussing
That's why I
real
propose.
solutions.
That's why I
Yeah,
propose exactly that the Democratic Party, instead of letting
yeah,
themselves be kidnapped by these extremist groups that only want to make noise, that they plant ideas. Because at the end of the
yeah,
day, when the voters want to want to consider this issue, they only see this noise.
exactly.
These
Of course.
people with their temper tantrums and well,
Yeah. Okay. We also have to have in mind that every time that someone is a pacifier and what wants to come with a solution ends up assassinated. But okay, we should be betting for that, because it's for the lives,
but here in the
the
United States
improvement.
now, nobody is going to assassinate any Democrat who wants to propose something in the lines of the Olmert plan. It's just that they are
No,
mediocre.
I was not thinking about the USA that much. I was thinking about the Middle East region,
Well,
because
there is different. Then there you have a
yeah, that
reason.
is different. Yeah,
And now
yeah.
I would like to pass to the clear winner so far is Putin. Higher prices in energy. China is being sidelining its own yuan zone. And the focus of the attention has been diverted from Ukraine to Iran, to the point that they said, if Trump doesn't get results, we are going to impose sanctions. And then in the last meeting, they avoided completely the issue of sanctions. Uh,
Yeah. I
so
think that the only thing in which he's winning is in buying time, because he's a very wicked Putin. It's not the same. He might
But
get
but
benefits from the
yeah.
conflict, of course, just like we were pointing out, whatever is coming and going from not only from Russia, but also from China and North Korea. That's one thing. The oil prices apparently are going to accommodate that. It's not going, prices might not get that high. I was also like looking for that kind of information today because I had two colleagues stating that the prices will not change. Let's wait and see. It's something that those are those facts or what is going to happen? Apparently, and maybe due to the ceasefire, things are going to be okay.
If you are Putin, what is the situation that benefits you the most? Almost not, because that implies a recession. And a ceasefire, even immediate ceasefire, no, because you
No,
want the oil prices to
yeah,
stay as long as
of
possible,
course.
without
Yeah,
that
yeah,
ended up in a
yeah,
catastrophic ending. And
yeah,
that means that avoiding the issue of Ukraine, the higher prices, the
yeah.
sidelining
But
of China are going to
uh,
keep playing in your favor for a while.
yeah, and he was also the first one to condemn the attacks on the sovereign and territorial integrity of the Republic of Iran.
And
So yeah,
how do you conceive that Trump wants to appoint him as mediator, the person who is most interested in
it's what I
it's
told you
laughable.
before. It's
Mhm,
what I told you before. Wherever he can put some troops, he gains. Because this is also part of the game. Because
mhm,
when you're speaking about Ukraine, you have to bear in mind Abkhazia, South Ossetia, you have to have Moldova in mind, and how they do this policy of getting into the countries and getting this up to 20% of the countries. We suffered ourselves the problem with the Armenian issue. That's why I can speak
mhm,
from the experience in the case of Putin, but it's also that we have to go back to other conflicts in which he behaved in the same way. That's why
mhm.
he's gaining time back now. And whatever conflict that
Moldova
benefits
and
him,
Georgia, especially Georgia, that is the basic model that he wants to export to Slovakia and to all. Romania has, for a very little, has escaped from being
Georgescu.
from joining that party. And in the case of Poland, that was almost as scary, and just Tusk has escaped by a vote of confidence, but barely. So,
Yeah.
and yet, that you see this kind of ridiculous proposals like proposing Putin as mediator, as power broker, and it's Trump's proposal. And what is the reaction of Europe? Silence.
Maybe he wants something from Putin by that time when
Oh
he wants
yeah.
to do that proposal. He might put name him as an arbitrator, and tomorrow he will come up with some other thing. He might do that. We don't know because it's part of the way he uses the leverage. And I don't mind that. I told you what is in his nature. Once again, it's like where does
Hmm.
he come from? He comes from the business place. So
Hmm.
it's normal, of course, even though he's a president and this is his second term, but it's normally to see how he rules the thing. But okay, with Putin, we have to be aware. We know that confronting and conflict is a way for him to waste to gains to have to gain time because the Ukraine issue is not moving, even though for all these people that we were talking about, Gallant, MOD, Gallant, Netanyahu, and also Putin, and also Maria Lebova-Belova, the human rights commissioner on his Russian government, they are all indicted before they have arrest warrants. They have all international arrest warrants, and that
understand.
limit the scope
If
of the
you have read Trump's biography from his times in Queens, and just in case, David K. Johnston have one of the best biographies of Donald Trump, you
uh-huh.
understand how Donald Trump behaves, among other things, who was that reflects who was his mentor, Roy Cohn, who was a
Um,
person. But
I
in
have to read that.
my concern is why Democrats and Europe, especially for instance Starmer still in Europe, still so seem to cling to the naive hope that Trump is going to somehow do the right thing in the end. I don't see that coming.
Maybe the right thing is not to put the American troops in risk. Maybe we don't know exactly what is a defeat or a thing achieved for them. Like this is a hectic moment, and I don't.
They should be more boldly following Frederick Merz. Yet, for instance, you don't see you see that they are dragging their feet on the overhaul of the European consolidation or the consolidation of the European defense system. It it has been the subject of mockery by scholars. So, and yet they seem to cling to this hope that Trump is going to. And I don't see that coming. So, what they would need is, on the contrary, long-term contracts, clear goals that reflected in guidelines, and clear contracts reflecting those guidelines to show that there is real progress, because Europe has a long tradition of wasting funds, like in the case of the New Generation Fund. And so those 800 billion euros committed to upgrade defense may not end up making much of a difference.
Yeah, could be. It could be. But again, I'm a little lost in this situation by now. I cannot see a prediction. I see this growing split. And I also, as I told you before, I see that they also unite and back the president, but I don't see like an exit from this, like a near exit from this. That's all I know. I know they don't want to
Now,
risk.
there are many ifs. So I
Yeah.
would like to
Yeah,
finish by
there are many.
giving you the last word about any issue on which you think
What
any issue you believe should deserve more visibility. We have about 3 minutes, but they are all yours.
Yeah, okay, okay. One issue that needs visibility, of course, is the amount of atrocities for Palestinians, for Israelis, for Iranians. That is something that we need to try to solve, because in the end, it's humanity that needs to prevail. One thing, I think that is the most important thing. That was the reason I was pointing out that we have this pendant arrest warrants for all these people that we were mentioning. Also today, and I leave you in the table just to discuss it in another time. I don't know exactly the role of AI and how the energy and the nuclear energy is going to be. Up to what extent it might or not be related to whatever we are discussing today, because it's the first time that I heard that the AI needs a lot of this nuclear energy. And ever since I don't know a lot about this issue, but I was thinking and I was like, okay, up to what extent this is important or not, just to bring. But all over that the amount of atrocities need to stop and people need to live like peaceful lives. That is all the message that I want to leave from this conversation today.
Okay. Yeah, I agree 100%. The matter is how to achieve that point, and that's why I may sometimes sound a bit cold, but I try to appeal to the self-interest as a way,
Yeah,
because people get tired of this kind of news, and then they
yeah.
turn the tragedies into statistics.
Yeah, of
So,
course. But there is accountability, there is rule of law, and we try to
as possible,
shift
there
whatever.
should be.
Yeah. I think that we should all fight to move things into that way, because otherwise, it's this amount of chaos that will prevail, and we cannot put things in order.
Okay. So I think we have covered many issues that have been neglected by the media. And thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you so much.
I hope to have you soon for some other issue.
Okay, I hope we meet again and with a better outcome from all these parties that are engaged into the conflicts. Yeah.
Let's hope so.
Yeah. Yeah, let's hope. Thank you so much, Alfredo.
Thank you.
Okay.